I will get us started, but you will get to hear from all three of us. Let's see, make sure I've got the right screen showing here. It's always a little tricky with multiple monitors. Are you able to see PowerPoint slides?
Yes.
Great. And thank you guys for the thumbs up. And I can see the chat, but toggling between things. So if anyone puts something in the chat that I need to pause and respond to, please feel free to do so. I'll introduce myself, and then I have my colleagues Emily and Chris with me. And so Emily, do you guys want to quickly introduce yourselves now and then reintroduce when you get to your slides? Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Thanks, Alex. So my name's Emily Keenum. I'm the Ready Regions Director for the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation. And the foundation works closely with DOE. We're collaborators not only in our PDG, public-private partnership, but also in other early childhood systems building. And I'll pass off to Chris, who is leading our coordinated enrollment for Ready Regions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Chase, and I work at Virginia Early Childhood Foundation as well. And my title is the Systems Administrator for Coordinated Enrollment. So right now I manage a large portion of our IT solution.
Thanks, Emily and Chris. And again, Alex McPherson. I am the Associate Director of Enrollment in our Office of Early Childhood Access and Enrollment at the Virginia Department of Education. I'm CCDF Co-Administrator and also help to lead our work around coordinated enrollment and really thinking about all of the public-private options for families in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So excited to share a little bit about our work in coordinated enrollment with you all today. And please stop us at any point if you have questions. I know we'll have discussion from there too. So here we go. Just a little agenda of the things that we're hoping to cover with you all. Would love to start with some context and share a bit about Virginia's Unified Early Childhood System. We think it's really important to always lead with our vision of what we hope to be true in the Commonwealth and explain how some of the recent policy changes that we've made to expand access and choice for families has also driven an increased need for coordinated enrollment more than ever in response to family demand. We'll talk about the Ready Regions and what an important structure they are for helping to administer the coordinated enrollment activities that the Commonwealth is undertaking. And then we'll think a little bit about what those activities look like, and then how do we, what's ahead? How do we want to move forward? Always thinking about, opportunities for continuous improvement. So a little bit about our shared vision. In Virginia, we envision a system where children come to school ready, where families have choices that fit their unique needs, where educators are supported and appropriately compensated, and where all programs are equitable in quality and meet the needs of young learners and their families. So that's our big ambitious goal here in Virginia. And we know that there are lots of things that need to be true and that we need to attend to in order to be able to realize that vision from the previous slide. And so these here on this slide are the pillars of our system. And we know that we won't be able to realize that vision without really attending to all of these areas. So we're always trying to think about expanding access and choice for families, supporting quality in our programs, engaging families as children's first and best teacher, ensuring that all children are in care that is healthy and safe, and innovating around a regional structure for coordination, which you'll hear quite a bit more about today. And just throughout all of that, we acknowledge that competitive educator compensation is a through line and is essential to each of these areas. You'll hear us talk a fair amount about Virginia's public-private system, and as we think about coordinated enrollment, these are the programs that we're coordinating among. And so we've got the Virginia Preschool Initiative, that is a state-funded preschool program that serves primarily 4-year-olds, some 3-year-olds, through the public school system. The Mixed Delivery Program, which is our smallest but fastest growing program. It's more of a contract model with private providers in specific areas of the state. Child care subsidy is our largest program. That's CCDBG dollars that are used to fund vouchers that go directly to, for the most part, private providers to serve children in the subsidy program. Head Start and Early Head Start, I'm sure you're all familiar with. And then, of course, our kids with special needs should be served across all of these programs. So that's just a little bit of the landscape as we talk about coordinating enrollment and all of the different options that families have in the Commonwealth. So again, as I said at the top of the call, Virginia has continued to expand access and choice in response to family demand. And this is just a little bit of last year's academic year data to share a little bit about the number of children that we're serving. So last year we served a little over 60,000 children. And that was across those different programs that I just named. So about 2,000 children participated in mixed delivery in this past year. That was a 40% increase from the prior year. So as I said, it's definitely our fastest growing program. And we expect more than 2,500 children will benefit from the mixed delivery program this current academic year. We have more than 21,000 preschoolers participating in the Virginia Preschool Initiative. Almost 1,000 of those are in community provider settings, which means, like private programs that are also serving VPI students. The child care subsidy program has grown month over month for the last couple of years as family demand just has steadily increased. And so in July of 2023, we were serving over 40,000 children in that program, and that represents, almost 8,000 child enrollment increase from 1 year prior to that. And all partners continue to work with Head Start providers to ensure that we're maximizing all of our federal resources and offering comprehensive services for our most vulnerable families. So, again, what does this have to do with coordinated enrollment? Well, we think it has a lot to do with coordinated enrollment because as Virginia has expanded access and choice, and as we're serving more children with public funds, this has resulted in an even greater need for coordinating enrollment in response to this increased parental demand, ensuring that we're all working strategically to support families to understand their options and make sure that every dollar is going as far as it can and that every slot is being maximized to serve children as best as possible. And so that is where our Ready Regions come in. Ready Regions are a critical structure to coordinate enrollment in Virginia. This is a relatively new structure. Ready Regions launched just over a year ago. And the 9 regions lead coordinated enrollment activities to support families and communities with access. And my colleagues at VECF, who introduced themselves just a minute ago, will share more about these activities with you all. So Emily and Chris, I will pass it to you.
Thank you, Alex. So I'll pick up here. So yes, what you can see in front of you is the regional map for Virginia, and that we have across the Commonwealth 9 entities that are leading coordination of early childhood services, starting with early childhood care and education. And for us here in Virginia, the kind of evolution of the Ready Region is a really exciting development. We began with our PDG communities, and we have long had smart beginnings. There were 17 of them. So what we see when we think about the Ready Regions mapping there is that every locality in the Commonwealth has the opportunity to benefit from coordination of services. So what you can see at the bottom of the slide are kind of the guiding principles that the Ready Regions operate under. They see as a priority that they're responsible for building relationships with childcare providers, stakeholders, families. They're responsible for increasing access. We have a variety of approaches that Ready Regions lead. The one we're talking about here today is how our Ready Regions coordinate enrollment to our publicly funded early childhood care and education programs that Alex has talked about. Very exciting work in Virginia. Our Ready Regions are also responsible for leading implementation of our Unified Measurement and Improvement System, which is required for all publicly funded programs to participate in. So this is a big lift as well. And our Ready Regions are charged with engaging family voice in systems design. So as you can see, those are kind of interrelated concepts, but they're really the undergirding principles that Ready Regions jump off of when they think about meeting their funded responsibilities. So as Alex said, 2022 was the first launch. It represents a really exciting development for this first time in Virginia. So I think scoot to the next slide for me, Alex, if you don't mind. So what we're going to talk a little bit about of what we've seen since our Ready Regions opened up and began leading this work across the Commonwealth. A little bit around in terms of coordinating enrollment, we've seen really strong growth. This is the first time that the coordinated enrollment was a funded responsibility. And what we've seen is that last year, 100%, every single region led coordinated enrollment activities in their footprint. So in a variety of kind of approaches, and when we are looking at what are the successes, what are the challenges, there's some variation in localities, variation across regions, but every single Ready Region lead organization brought partners together and led coordinated enrollment activities of some type. We also opened up and have led for all of the coordinated enrollment FTEs, and that was part of the Ready Regions model, is that every single Ready Region had a funded one full-time equivalent for coordinated enrollment activities. So not only were those staff positions funded to make sure the work was advanced, but that we hosted a monthly statewide community of practice so we could bring together these FTEs, they could talk about best practices, and they could share common challenges. A lot of them are not going to surprise folks. There were things like, how do you bring partners to the table who didn't necessarily want to be there? How do we figure out how to talk about a common application in a way that appeals to everybody? But that community of practice in an ongoing way was an opportunity for these FTEs to not only think together and talk together, identify goals and challenges, but also to problem solve together. Over the time that the coordinated enrollment community of practice evolved, in the beginning we had a really focused agenda, but it really turned into a bi-directional. Every session was in response to the feedback of the members saying, we want to learn more about this. We want to talk to state partners about this. So it became this really lovely iterative process of our FTEs coming together and learning together. I would say also we have kind of a grounding set of priorities. We are requiring that every Ready Region last year did a full regional self-assessment in a number of sort of activity areas related to coordinating enrollment across publicly funded programs. They would do that assessment, and then they had to build a regional plan. What were they going to do in their region that was going to move localities, communities, and the entire region forward in having more refined and more sophisticated coordinated enrollment processes? We have a rubric that we created so they could locate themselves in terms of like early learning all the way to really sophisticated and accomplished, where we hope folks will be as they think about bringing partners together, and that they would use that rubric to kind of ground themselves and set goals. And also, we're really excited to be piloting a coordinated enrollment technology solution. Some of the work of enrollment is a lot of information, a lot of coordination, and this solution is an opportunity to automate processes and then also to bring folks together around the opportunity of the technology solution. So next slide, Alex. So what you can see here is the DOE, I think, created this early on in the PDG grant cycle, but that this is our coordinated enrollment annual cycle. And so what you can see is that the regions are required to kind of move along a sequence of activities, and that all along the way, state partners, DOE and VECF, give feedback and help make sure that we're having bi-directional conversations, and that regions are able to say, oh, that's interesting, I hadn't thought of it that way. So they do that self-assessment in the summer, they get feedback from our teams, they complete a coordinated enrollment plan with specific goals, they get feedback on that plan and they implement, and then we think, rinse and repeat. What you can see at the bottom, those are the key activity areas that are along that developmental continuum. So we're looking to invite our Ready Regions partners to think with their stakeholders around how can they share and augment informational resources that increase coordination. How can they plan joint enrollment or information campaigns instead of every provider doing their own? How can they work together on simplified and streamlined eligibility determinations so parents aren't doing multiple applications and multiple processes? And how can they work toward a practical single application that a family would fill out and then be able within a locality to have eligibility consideration by multiple programs. And then lastly, what we know too is that wait lists create problems for families. So we're inviting our partners to come together and to talk about how they're going to collaborate in relation to wait lists instead of holding families or not necessarily making that referral so that the family can pick and choose about the care that meets their needs and serves their family lifestyle. So at this point in the cycle of our presentation, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Chris, who's going to tell us a little bit more about some of the benefits we see and expect to see, and then he's going to talk about our IT solution.
Thanks, Emily. So starting off with the annual cycle of activities, they produce a more collaboratively developed program, outreach resources, joint enrollment events, cross-provider referral agreements, shared applications, and shared wait lists, as Emily mentioned on the previous slide. And these expanded and improved activities really produce an important benefit for families and providers, even though there's still progress to be made, and we know that. So for families, they have a streamlined application process. Ready Regions are tasked with working with their partners and working with programs in their localities to develop an application that gets all of the information that's needed to determine eligibility across all of those publicly funded programs that Alex mentioned earlier. They also have access to information about program benefits and requirements. So when they log on to our IT solution, or when they speak to programs or speak to people that work within the Ready region, they are equipped to get the information about what they need to know about making an informed decision, and really kind of leading them to what's best for their family. So also for providers, there's a reduced administrative burden. That reduced administrative burden can allow programs to reach more families. This stabilizes their budgets and their enrollment, and gives them an opportunity to kind of focus on other aspects of their work and take care of the children, the employees, the families, things like that. This also gives them some business stability, so it's more efficient for long-term planning. Coordinated enrollment has the potential to serve more children while reducing burden on families and providers. And Ready Regions operate statewide, so every locality in Virginia is participating in coordinated enrollment. You can go to the next slide, Alex. So these are just some of the resources that we have available to our partners at Ready Regions. We have our coordinated enrollment self-assessment that Emily mentioned. We also have a coordinated enrollment rubric. This kind of lays out for each of those dimensions what level the Ready region may be at, and can better help them plan and decide where they're moving and where they need to put their resources and their time. And we also have a comprehensive coordinated enrollment guide. And this is a very well-developed document that has details about benefits of doing coordinated enrollment, as well as best practice for coordinated enrollment. And we also have some samples of like single point of entry applications, shared resources, things like that for partners to pull from and get examples of how they can build that out for themselves. If you receive the slides for this, the links are embedded, but if not, we're more than happy to share those links with you as well. And go to the next slide, Alex, please. Not a lot there. There we go. Next slide. There we go. All right. So now we're going to talk about what I primarily do, and that's the Virginia Coordinated Enrollment IT solution. And what we have is a web-based platform that automates and centralizes regional enrollment activities. And as we mentioned earlier, the benefits of coordinated enrollment extend to the families, the providers, and the Ready regions as well. So for families, they get a robust search of options. They have a finder when they log in and they create their account. They can look along their commute. They can put in local transportation and see if the bus line runs past some providers that they might want to stop and check out and see if they can serve their family. They have an integrated single application. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to collect enough information to screen the family for what publicly funded options might work for them. We can then educate the family on those options. They can make an informed decision, but really it's just a one-stop shop for them. They don't have to go around to multiple different providers and take days off from work and things like that. You also get a unique Ready Region webpage that features regional resources. So each Ready Region uses the same IT solution, but they all funnel their families through their own webpage that they own. So they get to brand it on their own. They get to have resources that are specific to their locality so that families aren't tracking down resources on the other side of the state. Really, it's designed for their voice to be leading coordinated enrollment in their region, so that families know who to go to and who they can trust for their resources. There's also benefits for providers. Providers are able to log in to the IT solution, and they are able to create provider profiles, and these are dynamic profiles. They can put pictures, they can put video tours. Families can message them directly and ask about coming to take a tour. They can upload documents that they want families to fill out when they come to visit them. And that gives us an opportunity to facilitate that enrollment and eligibility, because families know exactly what they're looking for and whether this program is what's right for them or not. And when the families make their decision and when they fill out their application, they actually get a chance to select the providers that they're most interested in so that we can best direct their applications for them. There's also benefits for the Ready Regions themselves. A centralized workflow and automation increases capacity to oversee enrollment processes. Coordinated enrollment and enrollment processes in general require a lot of back-end work for providers and for people who work with providers. And so by streamlining the application process, by streamlining the ability to get the application to the right provider, it frees them up and gives them more bandwidth to focus on connecting with families, assessing the work that they're doing and having response to that, and really being able to spend their time on perfecting the system versus just being in there and working through the process all the time. It also gives them the ability to report and have analytics that really help us understand supply and demand trends. So Emily mentioned waitlist earlier, and for anybody who's ever worked in childcare, you know that everybody has their own waitlist. Everybody has probably the same families on each of their wait lists. And what this does is it gives us a centralized place to house that information. So from a state level, we'll be able to pull those types of data points and really drive home the messaging that we all have been making and that we know is that where are the gaps in care, what is successful and what's not. So we really have that ability through a standardized system to pull that. Go ahead, Alex, please. All right. So our IT solution, pilot towards scale. For our first year in 2022 and 2023, we did a pilot. So we had 3 of our 9 Ready Regions collaboratively develop and launch the first iteration of a technology platform. And what's really interesting about that is that while each of them were using the same IT platform, they all implemented it a little bit differently. And what that did was that gave us a lot of good information and a lot of good data about, as we move forward, what's going to work best for families and what's going to work best for providers. So we got a lot of really unique information and feedback from that first year. This year, in year 2, we're standardizing our features and we're making revisions to the current development in preparation for a January 2024 enrollment season. So right now we're working really hard on the back end to make those adjustments that we learned about and improve the features that we know need improving from our first year so that families come back this year for this enrollment season and have an even smoother experience than they did last year. We learned a lot of things, but some of the key lessons that we learned are that with all successful coordinated enrollment strategies, IT solutions rely on strong relationships. So A lot of people who work in coordinated enrollment think that kind of getting there to the website where everything's in one place is kind of the final thing that you have to do. That's the last piece of the puzzle. And really what we learned is that the IT solution can be great, but it really doesn't work without those strong relationships and partnerships and without a great foundation and base understanding of what the community needs. We also learned that regionally customized IT features become increasingly complex and are unlikely to be scalable. So when you think about everybody doing it differently, then you can imagine that on the back end, the person operating the IT system has to do a lot of different things for a lot of different people. That becomes more complex as you grow and scale across the state. And so in an effort to be more scalable while also giving families a consistent experience across the state, we realized that we needed to kind of pull back on some of those things and standardize a little bit. And lastly, the IT solution functions as a complement to, but not a replacement for, program level eligibility and child placement determinations. So earlier I mentioned being able to kind of give a soft handoff to the right program from the single point of entry application. And that's really all it is. It's a soft handoff. Ready Regions are not determining eligibility. They are not making final determinations and enrollments. What they're doing is they're working with the family to get them to the best, to make the best match possible with a program. Once they pass that off to the program, they have the opportunity to still do interviews with families, to still do their own follow-up to make sure that documentation is appropriate and that they have everything that they need. But the nice thing is that if things don't work out with that program and the family comes back to our IT platform, we have the next place to send them. We already know where we need to go next because they've ranked those features. Somebody has communicated with the family, and really there's kind of a curated experience to finding your child care from there. Next slide, Alex. This is not my slide, so I'm going to pass it back to Alex. Thank you.
Yep, that's me. This is our last slide, just to kind of summarize, what has been shared and really thinking forward to, what's next. We are thinking through a lot of the pieces that, Emily and Chris and I already spoke about, right? How do we continue to use the structures, the activities, the tools and systems that are already in place to continue to strengthen those, refine, use those more effectively. So we are a pretty data-driven, I would say, state agency. And so, using the technology tools like Chris described and continuing to, with the support of PDG, use our Link B5 system, really going to try to continue to evolve our understanding of enrollment and the data that we have on the cusp of really taking off there. We want to use that data with all of our partners as well. So we'll continue to develop tools and share data with the regional leads, with helping to build capacity with those coordinated enrollment staff members in the Ready Regions that Emily spoke about earlier, really continuing to be as strategic as possible with using regional level data to drive decision making and to channel resources effectively. We want to continue to learn from the work of the Ready Regions. Again, this is still a pretty new structure. And so there's a lot of learning that is happening, and we're having lots of great conversations with the Ready Regions, getting their feedback on the processes to better understand, what aspects of the tools are most beneficial to driving their work. How can we support them in the work they're doing with coordinated enrollment? And that kind of funnels into that next bullet, continuing to refine the tools, strengthen those tools for the Ready Regions. And really excited with what's to come with that technology tool that Chris was telling us a bit about a little while ago. We think there's a lot of opportunity there as well as it pertains to, again, efficiency, supporting the Ready Regions, supporting families and programs, having great data. All of these pieces are very interconnected. So these are all the things that are on our minds and that we're having conversations about. And, throughout all of that, I think another critical piece is that we're just wanting to continue to deepen partnerships. You know, we want to continue to really support strong relationships and collaboration with the Ready region, you know, local steering committees, family councils, the Early Childhood Advisory Committee. There's so many key stakeholders at play here. And so we want to make sure we're all rowing together and in the same direction, because, you know, I love the proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. And so we are really just trying to coordinate and work together in this space, and continuing to leverage our partnership with the ECF as we do this strategic planning work. You know, Emily and I have been trying to sync up calendars and coordinate lots of meetings so that we can continue to have these strategy conversations as well, for what the vision for coordinated enrollment looks like in the long term. So I think the final slide is just an email address and a very adorable little girl.
Thank you so much, Alex, Emily, and Chris, for that presentation and all that great information. I think now we can open it up for any questions that people may have. You can take yourself off of mute, and we'd love it if you'd, you know, start your video so we can see who we're talking to. But any questions? That was a lot of information to process. While people are thinking, I have a question. Where you've gotten to so far, and you look at all that you've accomplished, are there things that you look at and say, you know what, I think we should do that differently, or we should tweak that a bit? Were there any things that like that came up, that you started doing it one way and then you know, we have to be flexible?
I'll jump, and then I think would love for my colleagues to talk. I think something that's really exciting in Virginia, and I think we mentioned it at the top, but this year is the first year that every single publicly funded program is required to participate in our data system. So when Alex talked about Link B5, that's every VPI, every Head Start, every Title I, every family child care home, every center. So that's unbelievable access to data. And I think an iteration that we're really curious about is now that we have all of those registered programs in a database, can we look at our cycle and ground it more intentionally in data? So instead of saying kind of more amorphously, are you at the beginning, the middle, or the end of information sharing? We're curious about whether there are opportunities to say how many of your Head Start programs are information sharing, how many of your centers are involved in information sharing, and to kind of embed data all across the rubric so that when we invite people to make plans, that it's not as hard to measure what success looks like. They'll be able to say, we increased by 50% our engagement in shared waitlist, for example. So I think that's something that part of this iterative process is where we are now as a state gives us another opportunity to look at how we can do our current structures even better. So that's the first one. I mean, that's what Alex and I have been trying to coordinate calendars on right now, is because those conversations have to happen across partners. It's not a VECF undertaking or a DOE undertaking. It's kind of like, how do we want to do this together? So that's what comes to mind for me. I don't know, Alex and Chris, did you have other ideas about doing stuff differently or what we've learned as we've come along?
No, I think all that was right on, Emily. And I think, you know, as you said, our thinking will continue to evolve as we have more data, as we see how the technology pilots are playing out, or the Chris is helping to lead there. And also the feedback we're getting from Ready Regions. Now that folks have dedicated capacity to lead this work, and more time and energy and thought can be invested there, right? I think we'll continue to hear more feedback about what works well, what needs to be tweaked. We've gotten some of that feedback already through, you know, we have a community of practice that meets, and they offer feedback about the timeline, right? You know, making sure that we're really strategic. You know, when is the best time for the Ready Region to pull together stakeholders and have those self-assessment conversations? when is the best time to set goals and set a plan based on the outcome of those self-assessments? So, I think, just speaking for the agency, something that we're still trying to grapple with is what is the role that a state agency should play in this space, and to what extent should it look, what pieces of this should look the same, similar, exactly the same, totally different, from locality to locality, community to community, and region to region. And so that's something we're still grappling with, where to be loose, where to be tight, where to offer a lot of local decision making, where to be more descriptive, where to be more prescriptive. So not so many answers as just, I think we continue to have more questions that we're raising, and the thinking continues to evolve here.
A work in progress.
That's right, Sandy. That's
Right.
why we're in the emerging room. That's why we're emerging.
Yes. Does anyone else have a question for our presenters? You can take yourself off mute and ask, or you could put a question in the chat. We're almost, I think, we
4
are.
more minutes.
Okay, yes. So I don't want us to be in the middle of a answer, and then when it cuts us off and takes us back, it's going to take us back. Would you mind sharing your emails if people have questions? It's always once you get off the webinar that you're like, oh, I should have asked them. You could put that in the chat. I think people would really appreciate that.
I'll also say, Sandy, since we have a moment, the coordinated enrollment guide that was produced last year, which was a collaborative effort, it's a really rich resource, and we're happy to share that with folks. If you're curious about what it could look like in a locality or how you might begin the work, it's just full of ideas and grounding concepts and strategies for bringing folks together for good conversations. And like we're redoing the rubric, we're going to be thinking of that as everything we learn, we're going to pop it right back in and kind of iterate that guide as well.
That would be great to share that with people. I think they would really appreciate that.